I foresee this future where I think it's going more multipolar, technocentric.
Two of our engineers are from Nigeria, and like they've been incredible to work with. I actually feel like we're almost more productive because we're remote, because it forces me to be very explicit and specific with what I want in terms of deliverables. And now, because I can work with talent from anywhere in the world, I can say, here's the task, here's what I want you to do, assign that, and trust and know that it'll get done.
This is the Mooncast.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Bro, I see you got the tunnel.io, man. I see you
That's
flexing,
right.
man.
Yeah, I got the tunnel shirt on this morning too.
This dude, man. What a shill. What a shill.
That's right, man. Dude, that's my entire Twitter feed right now. But just went full time, starting as of November 1st was my last day at Chainlink Labs, and been full time tunneling ever since.
How was Chainlink anyways? Was that good?
Yeah, man, that was the best experience I could have ever asked for. I mean, it was my first real software engineering job. For a while before that, I thought I was going to go into robotics and be really big in there. I actually worked for like 9 or so months at a robotics company in Minneapolis. That's like the only job I had where I was going into an office.
Yeah.
And it was cool, but I always knew that I wanted to be like an entrepreneur. And when you're working in robotics, you realize like, oh my gosh, the capital costs here. Like, I'm not saying you can't be a robotics entrepreneur. Obviously you can, but it's a much longer path, I think. Because to get to the point where you're going to get investors to trust you with like the tens of millions of dollars it would take to start a robotics company, like you probably have to have decades in the industry, a really clear business plan. But like in blockchain, I mean, all you really need to start your own company is like a laptop, maybe a little bit of coffee.
That's me.
So yeah, so it's like, okay, so I kind of, like that was 2020 time. So, going through the vid and all that, I really realized like blockchain was popping off. I was kind of interested in it, started learning about smart contracts, and I'm like, I think this might be a more viable place for me to break off into entrepreneurship. But I also knew like I couldn't just like start there. And so Chainlink Labs just provided a really awesome place for me to actually learn for a few years before, jumping off myself into entrepreneurship. But that was kind of always my goal, was to start my own business.
Yeah, dude. I love to hear stories like this too as well. Like what made you very much intrigued into getting into the blockchain space? Were you an investor first, or did you just like are you investing too as well, or is it just mainly development?
Not really. I always thought my area of expertise is like what I can build much more than like decision making and investing. I do not consider myself a very good investor at all, but I almost think that's kind of benefited me because it's allowed me to stay in my lane of just building. So I'm trying to think. So when I actually first got started, I was a Cardano guy at first, to be completely honest. I've definitely, my opinions have kind of changed after working with the tech all these years. Not to say anything bad about Cardano, but I just think in terms of what's being built out there, it's pretty clear, like, EVM, like even Solana too, but that's kind of where there's a lot more interesting development, at least right now. But yeah, what first got me in is just reading white papers. To be honest with you, I've never read the Bitcoin white paper. So what got
Wow.
me excited about blockchain, I read, it was actually Nick Szabo's paper. I don't remember the exact title, but it's about the capabilities of smart contracts. And I never got excited about like, again, I understand like how important Bitcoin is. I don't mean to like say anything, but just for me personally, what got me excited was smart contracts, because I was much more focused on like, hey, what can I build versus like, the financial systems and stuff. So I've never been a huge DeFi person, all that, which makes me like almost a little bit of an outcast in blockchain. But I was always like, hey, smart contracts are cool. What can I build with smart contracts?
Yeah. No, I definitely understand you from that perspective too as well. I know with Bitcoin, they have the integration of the Taproot upgrade, and they do have some implementations where you can do some form of DeFi and decentralized applications built on top. You can inscribe tokens and etc. So
Yeah.
there is some capabilities going on there, but I would say that the main chains that I think everybody uses is mainly Ethereum and Solana, and I think that's probably how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. Because the thing is, you can have the coolest tech in the world, but if you can't onboard users, and if you can't get them to use it, then what's the point? I think with Cardano, it's funny because I think a lot of people start. I was just laughing about the Cardano because I also started there too after my
Oh
Bitcoin
no.
journey. Obviously, yeah, you start with Bitcoin, and then you're like, okay, what are these other like wonky coins? Like, what do they do? These magic internet coins. And so I started going down a rabbit hole and then understanding smart contracts, and I was like, oh wow, it's basically like an if-then statement, but like done with just code, removing the third party, which is amazing. And then I got into Cardano and the UTXO, the extended
Yeah.
UTXO, and then understanding all the nuances on Cardano. And yeah, Cardano's cool, but yeah, I think where, like I said, all the attention is kind of more towards the Solana and Ethereum. So like I'm wondering, why is there a specific? Did you just was it just like an upskill, like to go to tunnel, or was it?
Like, so, to be honest, I actually had kind of the concept for Tunnel before I even started at Chainlink Labs. So this has actually been a really long time building. So like, yeah, I mean, I first got into the blockchain space, like I said, with Cardano, just started reading the white papers, reading Nick Szebo's paper on smart contracts. UTXO interested me just because I knew like the scalability concerns with Ethereum, sort of at a fundamental level, right? It's like you have like this single-threaded machine, and then the UTXO model offered this multi-threaded approach. So like that was kind of my formative thing of like getting introduced. And then after that, I'm like, okay, cool. So smart contracts are these things, but what can you actually do with them? All sorts of financial applications, but again, that wasn't my interest. So I'm like, what can like real world things can you do to facilitate agreements between people for like getting paid for doing something? And I very quickly recognized like, well, social media marketing is one of those clear things because we have clear data for it. Because it's really hard. That's the biggest problem when you're trying to build these agreements, like pay someone for doing something, is, well, how do you actually prove that someone did something? So pretty quickly, I'm like, so I had some background in e-commerce before, so I knew a little something about influencer marketing. Never really got a chance to use it that much myself because I was in such a niche industry. But I like already knew this as a solid use case, and so I started pursuing that. When I first actually like started working with things, I sort of assumed that oracles were a given, that it was just a solved problem, that if data was on the internet, like we can get it onto the blockchain, right? Like,
Yeah.
duh. And then I quickly realized, like, no, this is actually a very difficult problem, that there really wasn't, like, Chainlink existed, and that's, I knew about it, but the existing data sources were very much on Rails. I mean, you had price feeds. That was pretty much it. Well, proof of reserve too, but there was nothing where I could request custom data. Certainly nothing where I could get social media data onto the blockchain. And so, after kind of like figuring out that's when I really dove into the Chainlink rabbit hole a little bit and started playing around with their tech. And yeah, that's when I kind of learned about the Chainlink Hackathon, which is really sort of what spawned me getting into Chainlink Labs.
Yeah, man, that's such an interesting journey. It's so cool to hear everybody's story because it's so unique and different depending on who I talk to. I've spoken to hundreds of different Web3 professionals from all different aspects and walks of life and different verticals within the space too. Some are investing, some are trading, some are developing, and it's just so cool to see how your journey, started and with Tunnel.io, what is it specifically what is the value proposition for them? What do they do?
Yeah, so kind of like the basic thing. So I had mentioned like I was in a little bit of e-commerce before, and the reason why I was never able to actually engage influencers was kind of this core problem of trust that I think smart contracts solve. So I think the really core value proposition of what Tunnel provides is trust. So when I was in e-commerce, I tried to like DM influencers and be like, hey, can you promote my company? And I was just ghosted. They never replied. And I understood it. It's like, hey, what is our relationship even going to look like? Because if you try to say, send me $1,000 and I'm going to post something, I'm going to be like, I don't know you. Like, how do I know you're actually going to post something? And
Yeah.
so and on the other side, it's like they post something and I don't pay them. I totally understand the trust issue there. So when I saw like the smart contract potential of mitigating this problem by like holding funds in escrow, only releasing funds when a post is made that actually meets my requirements, that is sort of the value proposition that I saw. So that's really, I think, the initial seed that started of what we could provide with bringing smart contracts to influencer marketing. And then after that, I started to realize that it's not only this trust problem. I think that's like the core problem, but there's so many other things around that which make influencer marketing difficult, like coordinating with people, verifying like identity and actually knowing that their posts are going to perform in a certain way, making sure that their metrics aren't just all botted, organization, just the simple fact of right now, the standard for the marketing industry, influencer marketing, is a bunch of spreadsheets with just a bunch of names on that, and like Telegram handles, and just people you're supposed to DM. And they're going to tell you some wildly different prices. Like, for a equal amount of followers, you'll actually see like a 10x difference between what the lowest and the highest influencers are charging. So now you got this other problem of price discovery. Like, how do you know price, like what price to charge, or what to pay for people? How do you know what it's worth? So these were all sorts of problems that I've been learning about since kind of diving into this problem space, and all problems we're trying to solve. So we sort of started with that core kernel of trust. Smart contracts really solve this problem, and AI as well. So we're actually able to have a brand give content requirements just like in natural language, or specify a bunch of requirements. And then a creator can like verify that their draft of whatever content they're producing meets those requirements, then post it. And we'll actually use chain link functions to verify that the content that was posted meets this requirements before releasing funds. So it removes that middleman. So there's no arbitrary decision. It's not like Tunnel just decides yes or no, do you get paid for this post? But we actually have this, eliminating trust problems further by using like an AI oracle. So that was the core. But I think one thing you realize when building a startup, especially if you're a really technical person, is you might say, hey, there's this perfect technical solution which solves this problem. And you might be right, but there's so much more that goes into this problem to make it usable, to actually get users. And that was something I didn't entirely appreciate, and it's probably been my biggest learning journey along this path.
Imagine 10xing your earnings capacity to 100K per year while working remotely at the comfort of your own home. We are in the exponential growth phase of technological advancements. That means AI, AR, VR, robotics, and of course, Web3 technologies taking over the job market. At HeliCode Academy, we train students on Web3 hard skills and link them to employment in the job market. Find out more at helicode.xyz. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, for sure. I think go-to-market strategies is something that's where I'm pretty. I don't want to call myself an expert, but I'm seasoned in that area specifically, because that kind of sauce I bring to the table, is understanding, okay, which KOLs to reach out to, understanding what partnerships strategically to align ourselves with. And yeah, man, so it's very interesting to see you trying to learn that journey, because I know with my previous co-founder from a different product, because we built a B2B blockchain SaaS-based model for documentation and storage. And it was a very simple model where you just centralize all the stakeholders within a logistics process, and then you link the documents that are posted on the centralized hub with the transaction hash. In that way, it creates that immutability. So we found a very unique solution, and we were shilling it to logistics companies. We weren't calling it crypto or blockchain. We were calling it distributed ledger technology.
DLT.
Yeah, exactly. Because they shy away when they hear like blockchain, like is it like the Bitcoin thing, and it's like, no.
Especially in the bear markets, they're like, we're not touching that.
Yeah, dude. It was a struggle, man, honestly. And so one thing that we did was we attacked big major logistics companies. I think like through that experience, I was able to learn better go-to-market strategies. Like what we're doing right now with HeliCode is we've attacked student nonprofit organizations all across Africa. And so ISEC, for instance, so we've targeted them from different countries and then also we're targeting private schools now, so that we can go ahead and partner with them, synergize with them to be able to facilitate the edtech platform that we plan to bring on the continent. So yeah, man, dude, it's so nice to hear you and your journey. But I'm trying to see with the AI, how long does it take? Because it's a language learning model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Large language model. How long is it taking to feed the data sets into it, or is it properly ready, or like how long does that usually take?
Yeah, frankly, we have been able to get phenomenal results without any fine tuning. Just like a generic like model can actually perform really, really well. I mean, to be fully honest, like we're still in a private beta. We've only been in this beta now. I think we're nearing on 4 months, so it has been a bit. But a lot of that was me being full time at Chainlink Labs still, so like admittedly wasn't fully in it. So now that we've been able to collect all this data and see the performance is pretty good, but we know that we can get it far better if we do dive into the fine tuning of these models. And so I think that's sort of the next step. But the thing is, working with these models, it's really not hard. Like I think it almost makes you want to shy away from saying like, oh, we're an AI company, because it's like it almost feels disingenuous in terms of how easy the engineering is. Because like the hard thing is writing these smart contracts, building this whole system, making it actually trustless, making it secure, and then you start working with the AI side. You're like, man, this is not really crazy hard. And I'm sure I'm going to go back on this, when we get into like AI video verification, like it will get a lot harder, but I think that the AI portion has been one of the easier parts to work with that just does work. So that's been really exciting. Like even working with, these open source models, man, it's one of those things that shocked me, because I didn't first see this coming. When I initially learned about smart contracts and all these things, I very much thought, oh, these requirements are going to be like must post like a URL, and we just do a search string, or like, did you post this, did you include this hashtag, this sort of thing. And so kind of had to, or when like I did learn about AI, I'm like, oh my gosh, this so perfectly fits into what we're doing here. And I was very concerned, like, is this going to be super hard to integrate? And it was very pleased when I realized, actually, it's not, and in a few hours, I had like a somewhat functional script. And a lot of it is prompt engineering from there. But the next big thing is going to be all about the fine tuning. And you almost have to, you got to run before you learn to walk, definitely, with AI. So one of the things we did learn is, like, yeah, we could get decent-ish performance right out of the box. But in order to know that your solution is actually going to work, you need real user data. Like, you can't just, I could come up with some trivial, like, contrived examples of what I thought a sponsored post would look like. But, like, I don't know. I'm not a creator. I'm just kind of guessing here, and we need hundreds of examples at least in order to be able to fine-tune a model. And so we've kind of got something that like mostly worked, shipped it to users, and then we're just like collecting all the responses. So we're pretty clear about our data collection policies, especially in this early stage. It's like, look, you're using the product, like, we're able to see this is the content, these are the brand requirements, and then we're going to now be able to use that as we sort of exit the private beta phase and really iterate on the product. Now we can use these data sets to really hone in and get, the goal is above 99.9% effectiveness without any intervention. And I think that's actually a really quite easy now that we have that data. But if you're just sort of trying to fly blind and build AI models without already knowing exactly how your users are going to interact with these things, I think it's a really hard problem. So like, frankly, advice to other founders would be, if you have to like, sort of hide a lot of manual work behind AI, like if you just have a person behind the scenes that's like verifying everything that you do, or trying to introduce some delay. So maybe if you got like some sort of chat like interface, you're like, okay, we're going to pretend it's AI, but there's actually a person behind the scenes that's maybe using some AI tools. I see this with AI agents a lot on social media feeds, but it's actually the right way to do it. It's like, do the thing that doesn't scale, because you actually can make it work, because AI is pretty good at adapting, but you need the data first, and the only way to get it is by, just diving off the cliff and making something, even if there's a lot of manual intervention.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see how the approach that you guys take, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on AI in the future and how it affects the Web3 space, because I was talking to somebody earlier in a meeting actually, and they were saying that there's no real future that they see for, and I've heard this from multiple. This is like the third person that's told me this now. So I just want to, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not the contrarian by agreeing with them a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts because, you know,
Yeah.
you're obviously in this space too, and I like to get different perspectives, bro. You know, just very open-ended person, and, you know, I'm curious to hear your viewpoint and worldview on how you see the trajectory of AI and how it's going to affect the tech landscape. Will it eradicate the necessity to have a developer or to have a human developer?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you viewing that in the future, near future?
I think that AI is not transformative, but incredibly useful still. So I think there's the sort of, you know, that scale where you've got like, with the bell curve, that's what I'm thinking of, where, you know, you got like on one side, people are like, oh, you know, the uneducated person is like, you know, maybe this is, it's not going to have that big of an impact. And maybe the middle is like this total revolutionary, and then the smart end is like, you know, not going to have an impact, but it's going to be a transitional change. And that's sort of my opinion, especially when it comes to like, first, you know, just thinking about developing. As a developer, I am 2 to 3 times faster with AI than I would be without. I mean, that's not incredibly revolutionary because I can't do things that I could not already do, like with AI, but it makes me a lot faster, so I can get a lot more done personally. So I don't know that that's necessarily revolutionary, but like, man, I can get a lot more done. But it's certainly not replacing me. Like, I need to be there. I need to review the code because it's about knowing the questions to ask to get the results that you want. And I don't think that a non-technical programmer could do that. That being said, I don't even bother to learn syntax anymore. Like, I don't even know SQL. I kind of always said, oh, I want to learn SQL.
Yeah.
I will never take the time to learn SQL because why? Now I can just say, here's what I want to do. But you still have to you still have to know exactly how you want to fetch the data, right? Like, I have to be very explicit. You know, here's how I want to loop over the data. Here's how I want to extract it. And I have to already have all my programming knowledge of, is this an O of N operation? Is this an O of log N? Like, how efficient is this algorithm? Because the AI is not going to necessarily spit out an efficient algorithm. I can describe exactly what I want and it can put it into the syntax. But if you don't already have a very clear idea of the algorithm you want, you're not going to get the results that you want.
Yeah, what do you think about, because at least, okay, we're talking about right now, but even right now, would you argue and say that the junior developer can match the senior developer right now leveraging AI? Or would you say that that's not really the case right now? Because that's kind of what I'm kind of leaning towards, is like there's going to be way more competition, and then eventually at some point the AI will get to a point where it can just do things autonomously. You just tell it what to do, and then it will just literally do it. Like code, like create an app for X, Y, and Z. You know, have this time. You know what I mean? It's just going to be able to just auto-populate exactly what you need. But I don't know if you see that future happening in the near future. If you don't, and what do you think about the junior developers being able to match now the senior developers in terms of experience by using the AI's leverage?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way I see it is, in my experience, both at Chainlink Labs and even like a little bit now starting at Tunnel, the more senior you are, the less code you write and the much more you're reviewing code and building architecture and talent, like describing how things are going to get done. So with the senior engineer doing those sorts of things, I now frankly need probably less junior engineers to sort of do what I'll, for lack of a better term, the grunt work of taking this design and actually producing the code that works. So I actually think that I don't know that it's necessarily bringing the junior developers up to having the ability of the senior developers. It's that the senior developers are now able to get more done. So I think one of the things you learn as in your time as a developer is creating the architecture is kind of the hard part. Like, how is this whole system going to fit together and work? And then when you break that down into the individual tasks of, okay, I need this function to do X, Y, and Z, that's the kind of stuff that you pass off. And I don't mean to say that it's easy. Because it's still very hard to say, here's the specifications, build the function, make sure it's an efficient way, make sure it works, that all the edge cases are handled. That is still difficult, but it's a unit of work that you can pass off, and one person can kind of wrap that up and complete it, so, and put a button on it. And so I, as like that higher level leader now, can break that down in these individual tasks, assign that to these junior engineers, and that gets it done. And now these junior engineers, that task is going, they can just do more. So it's still hard because they're still going to have to figure out how to prompt the AI, still review that code, thoroughly test it. I mean, I would say about half my time as a developer is purely testing things. So either reviewing or just thinking of all the edge cases. And so now AI makes that faster and easier, right? It's a lot easier to set that up, but you still have to do it. So when I think about it, I think that the senior people, when you're thinking of architecture level decisions, I don't see AI making any headway in that at all. If like how we build tunnel and how the smart contracts interact with the front end and how we're going to use the decentralized Oracle network to verify agreements, like all that stuff, AI is not going to give me any sort of answers for that. But if I can sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil, draw out this whole thing, and then break it down into like, okay, this component, what does this thing need to do? And then I write out all the bullet points of exactly what it needs to do. Then I can kind of hand off those bullet points, either to an AI directly or more commonly, put that in a ticket, hand it off to another developer who can like work with the AI and make sure that like it actually does what we say we want it to do. AI is not replacing any developers, but it's just making them much more efficient.
And would you stick with that statement 5-10 years down the road? Like that statement would still, you think, would be able to be held true?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I could be wrong, but my gut feeling is I'm seeing these models plateau. And so when I look 5-10 years out, like I don't think we're getting 5-10x better from here. Like I think 2x better, 3x better. And I don't see these 2x, 3x better things as these monumental changes. Like I think hallucination will be reduced. Like look, it still happens every now and then. I'll ask the AI to give me some code, and it gives me something with a bug in it. And I'm usually able to pretty quickly correct it. And I think that the rate at which these bugs occur, or it's not giving me quite exactly what I want, I do think that'll decrease. But I don't think that one day I'm going to be able to tell it, like, build a website from scratch, and it'll actually, like, maybe it'll give me this contrived, like, I'm sure we've all seen the demos where you're like, build me an e-commerce website, and it does that. But there's so many little decisions and specifications that go into there that, you're just letting the AI take the wheel, and I don't, like, how can it possibly know what you want? It's not even about, like, how, quote, good the AI is. It's like, it's not magic. It can't just guess the kind of specifications you have. And that's where the human decision maker needs to be in the loop, because only you have the full context of the customer, the user problem, the actual business value that you're trying to provide.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to hear you speak about this. What do you think about because I know you're a little bit more familiar with robotics, and I was looking into the Tesla robot, and I'm wondering, because from my estimates, from what I was reading online, they're going to be worth about 20 to 30K a pop, and I'm like, okay, well, the average salary in the U.S. is like 45,000, so I'm just doing the math. I'm like, well, you could cut your expenses by like, 33% or so. So I'm wondering, how do you see the future with robotics and the synergies between robotics and artificial intelligence, and the disruption that's going to have on different sort of verticals like software development or any other vertical that we can think of, in the tech space?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I learned in my admittedly short time in robotics is it gave me an appreciation for just how incredible of a machine the human body is. Like, the human body, what it's capable of doing, the dexterity and the strength and the way that it's able to move is extremely difficult to replicate with robotics. I think that some people don't have an appreciation for just what an incredible thing we can do with our bodies is, and how hard it is to make a robot do that. That's what I see as one of the biggest bottlenecks with robotics. And I don't mean to say it's not possible. It's really difficult to say what's possible, but I think it's going to be extremely slow to be able to get to the point where we can build a robot that can do what humans can do. Like, if you have a very specific task, like, look, I need to take this part and put it in this box, or stack this thing on top of this other thing. Yeah, if you give like very specific requirements, you can make a robot that does that way better than a human that could ever do it. But the ability to do like everything like our bodies can do, man, it's going to take forever. So I think that the Tesla robots or the Optimus, I think they've got a really big challenge ahead of them just in the physical body space. When it comes to the software side of things, like getting it to learn how to do certain things, that I think there's a little more capacity to do, just because I think you can get away with a lot with simulating it. Like, I mean, look at what we're able to do with video games, how close we're able to get to real world, physics. So I think that's why I think you'll probably be able to get a lot farther there. I think that the software is going to go a lot faster than the hardware in terms of capabilities. But man, it's still a really hard problem. And then you do try to bring it and test it out in the real world. And again, this is kind of why I, at least for the current time in my life, got out of robotics, is because the iteration time is so much slower. Because now, yeah, great, you got this simulated thing, you got this software, it all works and tests. Now we got to bring it into production. You see what Boston Dynamics does, where they've got the robots and they're kicking them and stuff, and they're able to respond. But every iteration, you now have to build a brand new robot. You now have to set up the testing environment and run that. And work involved in things, someone's got to do it. And there's physical constraints, there's cost constraints. It's extremely expensive to set all this stuff up. And so that's going to really slow down this process. So I think it's going to take decades, maybe even hundreds of years to fully realize what robots are capable of. That is very much my uneducated gut feeling. But just from what I see, and also like lack of capital investment. If you're an investor, I could dump money into some L2 blockchain AI infrastructure project, 10x my returns, in a few years, versus I invest in robots and it's just absolutely lighting money on fire. And maybe like 2 decades from now, we actually get something that justifies all that investment. So the incentives aren't really there to properly invest into robotics. So that's kind of my feeling on it.
Picture this. You're an inspiring computer science major. You have the 4-year degree program finished. You get out, start looking for work within the job market, and then you realize that there's no jobs. What you end up doing is you become an Uber driver because you realize that piece of paper that you were chasing was actually worthless. The reality is, most institutions are behind. HeliCode solves this problem by teaching you on-demand Web3 tech skills in a short duration of time and links you to employment with our job placement services. And the best part is, you can work remotely. Find out more at helicode.xyz. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting perspective that you have. I just always think about, as long as they can like maybe do the simple things like flip a burger, like take an order, then I think a lot of, at least not the tech jobs, but at least like some of the more minuscule, unskilled labor jobs, I think those can be taken by the robot. But anything that's more labor intensive or maybe intellectually intensive, maybe the robot wouldn't be able to do, right? For a long period of time.
I almost think that it's a little bit worse. I actually think that the robot is going to be able to take a lot of intellectual stuff. Like if you are a manager and your job is to maybe make decisions about how we allocate resources within the company, or supply chain management, right? Like my job is to figure out how much of X, Y, or Z to order, where am I going to source it from? I think that's actually the stuff that AI is going to be really good at. I actually think that it is the physical things that it's going to be hard. Like, even flipping a burger, right? Which seems like a pretty straightforward, you put the spatula under, you flip it over. There's I know at least one company that's in that space.
Dude,
how do you justify the investment? Because first off, the upfront, yeah, it's so expensive to buy the robot. And these robots break down, and so now you got to hire a guy to come out, and that's just inevitable. It's just things are going to break. So now you have to justify this way higher cost of a human coming out to repair these things and all that technical know-how. And you start looking, you're like, man, I could hire an unskilled laborer to do this, and it's relatively cheap. I know the cost. There's no unknowns with that. Or I can invest in this robot. It's a huge upfront investment. Now it's going to have to be serviced at whatever interval. There's a lot of costs associated with that. Like, those people seem to think that you just buy a robot and it's just this one-time fixed cost and it just works for forever. It's like, no, that's not how it costs. I mean, you buy a car, like, how much of a car, like, your costs associated with a car are related to maintenance, just keeping that thing working. Like, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but I know it's very significant. And with robots, it's way worse. You know, having worked in a robotics facility, like, I know. So a lot of times you actually do run the numbers and you find out, man, we really should have just hired a guy. The robot wasn't always the great solution, which it kind of hurts me because as a technical guy, I'd love to picture this tech utopia. We're a long way from there for the numbers to make sense.
Well, how does the future look like to you? Because I kind of see the future as this is my thesis. I think we're moving into a multipolar technocentric future. But I don't know if you have this similar thesis in mind. I think there's like dynamics and things are shifting. People are getting more connected on the internet. I think there's only like 1.5 billion people left that aren't connected. And by 2030, it's going to be about 95% of people that are connected, because right now I'm here in Ghana right now, bro, and everyone's connected, man. Like, even if you go to the villages, like, people are connected, man. Like, the internet's pretty damn good. You know, I'm doing a podcast on it. You know, so
yeah,
like,
you're crystal clear. Like, the latency's low. It's incredible.
Yeah. So I'm quite impressed with how quick, like, most people are really pushing this, like Starlink also, as well as WMT. There's companies are really attacking these remote areas a lot to get people connected at affordable rates. So I just wonder if everyone is connected, and it appears that there's a shift happening also as well in finance. So, and also with e-commerce. So the synergies between them with cryptocurrency, allowing people to accept and receive payments globally, with like Bitcoin or USDT or whatever the case may be. So it gives people more access to take their skill set and sell it to the open market, right? So I foresee this future where I think it's going more multipolar, technocentric. Like, kind of imperialism is dying down, and sort of these sorts of old regimes, facets are kind of shifting. So I don't know, how do you view, I guess my question is, how do you view the next 10, 15 years? Do you see that us trending towards that technocentric future, or do you have another thesis in mind?
Yeah. What I've been incredibly excited to see is, like, I think remote work is going to be one of the biggest unlocks here in terms of, you're for that multipolar thing. I was just having a conversation with my grandma at Thanksgiving, and I was mentioning, so two of our engineers are from Nigeria, and, like, they've been incredible to work with, and the remote work environment has been great. We're able to really rely, like, you'd think that would be a barrier at first. I think the naive person would think, oh, you'd want them in person, so there's that trust and ability to make sure you communicate with a high bandwidth. I actually feel like we're almost more productive because we're remote, because it forces me to be very explicit and specific with what I want in terms of deliverables. And now, because I can work with talent from anywhere in the world, I can say, here's the task, here's what I want you to do, assign that, and trust and know that it'll get done. I think it's going to be much harder for developers, particularly in the United States, and expensive places that are very expensive to live, like California and that sort of thing, to justify the salaries they're currently able to get, unless they really step up in that level of value they're able to provide. Like, look, if you're an incredibly bright engineer and you can, like, articulate the architecture that you want and then break that down into tasks and hand that off to other devs, I think you're still going to do okay. But if your job is just, I write code and I can come into an office, don't bet on that for forever, because there's talent all over the world now in much lower cost of living places, and businesses, especially startups, are going to realize, like, it doesn't really benefit me to pay somebody, well over $100,000, like $200,000 a year to develop here. So now I'm seeing, like, I love that I'm able to work, especially in Africa, because the level of talent there is incredible. It
It's
makes me
crazy,
feel
bro.
good that I'm actually like able to pay a salary that I think, look, we're a startup, we're scrappy. It's not like we got a lot of money in the bank to like blow on salaries. So we've got to be very efficient with what we're spending because otherwise the company will literally die. And so the
Yeah.
amount of return that I'm able to get, and then when I'm paying that salary, it's not so much like if I was paying whatever salary we could afford in the United States, I know I'm paying for someone to live in like some one bedroom apartment. They're probably not putting a lot of money away in savings. They're really not able to care for a family. There's probably some single guy that can afford enough for like, pizza and an Xbox, where even a lower level of salary, I'm able to pay that to people in Africa and actually like change their lives, like actually take
Yeah.
care of their family, actually put money away in savings. And I see a lot of like, I don't mean to pretend like I don't, donate a lot to charity or anything like that. But I feel as though I'm almost able to have a better impact on the overall level of like human quality of life by paying good salaries to people overseas. And in terms of overall human flourishing, I think that's going to be a huge unlock because these people in other places in the world are able to compete on an equal playing ground to people in the United States. They are going to be able to radically improve their quality of life and community and all that. And so that makes me really excited. I always thought I was kind of like a little bit of a hermit and a shut-in. I never really wanted to travel the world or anything like that. But it wasn't until after I started working with people overseas, it gave me a much better appreciation for people. It allowed me to connect a lot better and have more empathy. And now I really want to go and meet these people in person because it's given me so much more of an appreciation for how similar we all are.
Yeah.
That's really the coolest thing to me. So I think I don't know about like the technical thing or the economy or investing and all that, but what I am bullish on is human understanding of each other because I've seen it in my own life.
Yeah, yeah, dude, it's well said. Yeah, dude, you mentioned something about the talent here, and that's the reason I'm here, man. It's crazy. So what I'm doing is basically it's a very simple business model. It's just I'm just trying to centralize that talent, that intellectual human resource, and export it globally. That's it. So I'm just finding the talent, I'm training the talent, and once I have a nice nest egg, I want to export it. Um, because it's incredible. Like the dude, there's a dude now that's building my guest house, which I'll show you offline. And man, this guy is freaking talented, man. Jeez, like I like it's amazing. Now like we're gonna be like working together now, doing multiple projects now. So because I just seen that like it's just incredible, bro. Like I'll show you like again like once we get off the podcast, it's just amazing this level of talent, like it's hard to find, especially trustworthy too, and then also talented at the same time, and does a really good job. Doesn't try to cheat or anything like that because my dad's been scammed in the states. I've been scammed in the states. Uh, I've heard issues. My girlfriend's Bulgarian, so pe- people were scamming in Bulgaria. They're doing like selling these off-plan sort of real estate projects, and then not ever delivering, and then like taking off to like Mykonos or wherever. And yeah, man. So it happens everywhere. Like with these just scammy contractors. It's just nice when you get a talented one that's honorable. But yeah, I just see a lot of talent here, man. Is basically what I want to say with that. And it's good that you've noticed it and spotted it too. And
Yes.
trust me, I tell you, there's other people that are starting to wake up to it. So yeah, enjoy it while you still can.
Yeah, I love it. But like, look, it's actually fair. Like, the salaries are gonna rise. There's gonna be more competition. I think that's good for everyone. Again, there's
Yeah.
gonna be some people in the U.S. and there's gonna be some pain, and I don't want to downplay that. But at the same time, I think it's a more fair way for the planet to operate. Like, look, if there's talented people out there, they should be given the same shot as everyone else. Like, I feel like I've been so incredibly blessed to have been born in America and get the opportunities that I have, and that's great. But it is unfair. And I think people need to recognize that. And the way I think that you compete with unfair, or like that, when everything is more fair, I think everyone plays at a higher level in their own game. Because instead of just taking advantage of these innate opportunities in their life, they're sort of forced to work harder and compete on a fair playing field. I think that's better for everyone, right? Everyone's going to be forced to use their brains more, to work harder, to be more focused. And I think that's overall just better for humanity.
Yeah. You mentioned that everyone's going to be able to use their brains, but I always think about the Elon Musk and Neuralink, man. So this is my thesis, bro. This is my thesis. So at first I was like, no way, no one's going to implant a chip into a brain. But then I thought, what if one guy's like, you know what? I'm too lazy to work really hard to extract that intellect. So I'd rather just pay and then get the intellect on demand, and so that way I have a strategic advantage over other people. And then someone's gonna see that, like, oh my god, this guy has a strategic advantage over me, and then it becomes competitive. So then he then pays, and then also gets the chip. So then he also can compete on the same higher level of intellect, and other people will do it. This is my thesis of how it's gonna play out. But I don't know what your thoughts are on the Neuralink and how you kind of foresee it. Do you think there will be mass adoption? It will be.
Yeah.
Because it happened with social media, dude. You and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both. Remember, we weren't on social media. And remember, we had to get on and become dinosaurs. Right? So do you think the same thing would happen?
That's a good question. You know what I've actually thought? So it's been hard for me to envision like how Neuralink like implants information on my own brain. So like I just don't understand that. I know that there some capabilities, but what I've probably had a better understanding of is, okay, I get this chip implanted, and instead of like typing anymore, I just have a direct interface with my computer, right? So I don't have to, move my mouse and click on you. Like I can just think and it just happens, right? Or typing a message or whatever. Like that high bandwidth output communication from my brain to whatever technology I'm working with. And I just think like, man, how much of a bottleneck is it that I gotta type into a keyboard or click over to a tab every time I want to like talk to ChatGPT or something? Like if I could just sit here, hands behind my back, and just do all that, like how much more could I get done in a day? And and if I have that, like, how could I not? Right? Like I'm such like a person like I'm competitive, right? I want to get something done. We all are in the startup space. That'd be hard to refuse, man. Especially if you saw somebody else doing it and you're like, man, I'm competing against that guy. Like he's augmented and I'm not. I don't know how I feel about it. Like I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Like maybe it actually is a good thing. I don't want to reserve judgment. I think that a lot, like the gut reaction is it's pretty fucked up to think like everyone's gonna have to become a cyborg now just to like compete in society. That might not be great. But at the same time, like, is that the way? Like if we all as humans can be 10x more productive because we get chips implanted, like populations are shrinking. We actually are gonna need to have less people need to do more. I mean, it sucks for like inequity, because now only the rich can afford these things. Are they just going to, the rich stay rich and get richer? I don't know what it's going to look like yet. But maybe the rich are more resistant to it, right? Like, if you're already comfortable, you're like, hey, I'm not getting a chip implanted in my head. But that young, hungry person is going to be like, you know what? I'm going for it. Let's get this thing implanted. Maybe it kind of flips the script. I don't know. The future's going to be wild, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. You mentioned something too as well about the population shrinkage. So that's particularly mainly just in the global north. So actually, if you look at Russia, South Korea, they're actually paying people money. Like I think South Korea is $75,000 per baby to have a kid, really? And then in Russia it's $11,000 per kid, and so. Yeah, so that's happening all in China too as well. They're all having an aging population crisis, a decrease in fertility rates. But in the global south, particularly in Africa, the population is actually increasing. I think the fertility rates in Africa are about 4.4, which the average is,
really?
Just to give you perspective, the average is 2.1, whereas the States is below that. Every global north is below that. They're at like anywhere from like 1.5 to South Korea's 0.72. So... And I don't know if you heard about this like 4B movement, but there's this like movement going on where girls just don't want to. Yeah. Like my girl was telling me about it. I'm not on the internet, so I never know any of this stuff, but she just tells me. And she's telling me that like girls are like rebelling and like don't want to procreate. So I don't know what's gonna happen, but in Africa, the population is increasing. And this is why again I wanted to invest in the human capital there, because I realized that if I can get them skilled, it can help also with the global north, because as they have an aging population, there'll be a decrease in the amount of workers they can use to disseminate to every different vertical. So because of that, they're going to have to export labor or export. They're going to need to import labor, right, from other countries through the internet and through remote work and etc. So that's why the workers or the population in Africa needs to be skilled, because if it's not skilled enough, it won't be prepared for the demand that we're looking to outsource the labor. And so that's basically kind of how I'm looking at things moving forward in regards to the population cohorts. And it's interesting to see, because I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know if it's going to be subsidized with AI and robotics as a partial. I know outsourcing labor is going to be one of the things why we just plan to position ourselves with HeliCode for that, because that's just a guarantee. You're already doing it. There's plenty of people that are already looking. They're looking for that talent. So that's why
I tell everybody
that talent.
If a startup founder comes to me and is like, "Hey, I'm looking to hire," I'm like, "Have you considered like looking at Africa, because it's so much potential there?" So yeah, I mean, it's the one of the things I'm curious though is I just don't have this insight. Do you think that in Africa the population rate, like obviously this trend of being way above replacement rate is going to continue for decades? Do you think it will sort of face the same thing in the global north, where there is below replacement rate, like 100 years out? What is your thought on that? Or do you think that just because culturally it'll be like stay strong and people will want to have large families?
No. I think that populations tend to peak when there's an increase in education levels and in Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs. So when people's basic needs are met and got to a certain specific point, they tend to then venture out to get more information on what they want, what their needs are. They start to reflect on ideologies within society and etc. And they tend to start getting. If you look at it, even in some populations in Africa, like I've studied this actually. So if you look at Rwanda, for instance, their population fertility rates are actually dropping, and it's the fastest rapid dropping rates. Why? Because the women are more educated. The men are more educated. There's actually more women in the workforce than the men. It's the sixth fastest growing economy in the world right now, Rwanda. I think fifth safest country, sixth fastest growing economy, and fifth cleanest country in the world. And I've been there, and you would be impressed. Like that's why I say you should travel. I was really impressed. Yeah, I was really impressed. It's like a paradise. But the president's been there consistent for like 30 years. Just keep voting him in, because he's just doing such a great job. And they don't have like a voting cap of like 8 years. But yeah, so when you look at those studies, like in Africa, where the countries are more developed, if you will, they tend to start decreasing in fertility rates for that reason, because the women get more educated and they understand that, hey, it's maybe not economically viable, and also maybe I want to pursue X, Y, and Z. Whereas in a poor disenfranchised sort of situations, you have situations where the women basically cling more towards the men, and there's not enough opportunities to go around. And so so that's why that happens. So as there's more education, more push for training and development in the human resource, there's going to be a decrease in fertility rates over the course of time.
Hey bro, I'm just trolling is something that will not just challenge your perspective, but also touch your heart and soul. It's a book that defies convention, blending art and literature into a thought-provoking masterpiece, a reflective piece of provocative art that tackles societal constructs from angles you've never considered. Hey bro, I'm just trolling delves into the very essence of our existence. It questions the technology that surrounds us, challenges our notions of beauty, stares unflinchingly into the eyes of death, and questions the boundaries of freedom. It scrutinized the educational system that molds our very future. This book is a journey, an exploration of shared human experience, and it's a work of art that refuses to be confined by tradition. It's a canvas painted with words, a melody of thought, and a testament to the power of creativity in a world dominated by algorithms and data. Visit moonboycapitalventures.com and get your hands on Hey Bro, I'm Just Trolling today. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Now let's jump back into the show.
Yeah, this is something I've thought about too, because I mean, I only have anecdotal evidence. I think it's way too early to tell, but be, like my wife and I have always kind of known like we want to have a family, and we actually want to have a big family. And you know, I don't always want to say it's like, oh, it's because of population. All this, look, you know, it's a very personal decision. It's not like I'm trying to sort of save the world by like having just a couple more kids, right? But I think it is still in the back of my mind a little bit, like, hey, you know, it's good for humanity to have more children. I think for a long time there's almost this feeling like it's bad to have more kids because there's more strain on the environment or just, you know, whatever resources are out there. And I think I've seen it just at least, you know, in my own part of Wisconsin, which is like Midwest, very just like much more focused on family and things. But I am seeing people say like, hey, you know, I want to have a big family. I think it's good for the world for me to have a big family. And so I almost wonder if there's like, you know, if you just like think of the arc, it's like, hey, people got more educated and women don't have to have children anymore, and we have birth control and all these awesome things. So, you know, of course, birth rates are going to drop, but maybe there's almost this resurgence where people recognize like, hey, it's actually good to have children. Like, it's a net good for the world, and maybe governments are going to do more to support that. And I'd love to see a world where like population rates like go back up and we get back to that like 2.1%. I don't think you're ever going to go back to the days of farm families where you'd have like 10 kids, right, working the farm, which is that's my dad's generation, right? He has 8 brothers and sisters, or 8 in the family. I don't think we're going back to that, but it would be nice if it sort of balanced out. And I'd be curious to see the trajectory of Africa, right? Because I think population rates probably will dip, but is there going to be this thing where we go back to neutral? I don't want to be so pessimistic of thinking, oh my gosh, the global population is just going to continue to shrink. You know, it'd be really nice if we found some sort of stable, and that's how we continued for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Africa is for me, it's the most interesting place because it's kind of the location that supplies the entire world with everything. You know, some not really
oil,
by
minerals,
choice,
all
but
sorts of other resources, labor now too. It's super interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So for me, looking at, because I pay attention to the geopolitical landscape too as well, and just see how there's a shift happening. You know, with BRICS. There's a shift happening with some of the African nations now being able to get back control of their resources. So I'm curious to see how things are going to progress, because it's quite fascinating now. Because because people are connected, they now have access to more information. Like if you see, I don't know if you've paid attention really to geopolitics in Africa. Most people don't, because you know the West kind of controls the media, so they don't show what's happening there. But in Kenya, an Indian company was going to buy an airport in Kenya, and then the people found out about it and started TikToking each other, and then they all went in through TikTok to go and start a protest, and so that got canceled. And then also the Kenyan government tried to borrow money from the IMF then the IMF as a reciprocation was going to impose more austerity measures onto the nation, so which would then reduce their sovereignty, right? So then they said no, and then they protest, and then it didn't end up happening. So people are starting, because the connection is there, right? People have smartphones. You go to, like where I'm at here in Ghana, bro, everybody has a smartphone. Actually, everybody pays with their phone here. So yeah, it's crazy. I found that super fascinating. And how they did it was, there was a telecommunications provider called Mobile Money, and or MTN actually. They created this thing called Mobile Money, where they linked your SIM card with your ID card, and so then whenever you sent the actual mobile provider money, it credited to your account, and then so that's how you were able to facilitate transactions. And then now it's the fastest growing transactional business, like in most of Africa. You know, they use it. They've expanded all throughout the continent. You know, so that's why when I saw that, and I was like, oh man, crypto is like super obvious, and also crypto adoption is huge here. By the way, it's huge. People use it because they don't really have an alternative means to really save. So because their currencies are inflating faster, right? And obviously, it's by design, but yeah, so they're inflating faster than the U.S. dollar is, and so they need a way to store their purchasing power. It's just similar to like not just in Africa, but also if you look at the Turkeys, the Argentinas, the Venezuelas, and etc. So it's mainly a global South issue for the most part, and so they're just storing it in USDT because at least it inflates slower, and then they can preserve their purchasing power.
So
a
still
bit,
some
and then
stability.
when
So
you
they're
wanna
not all
swap-
in on crypto assets, but these stablecoin assets seem to be the killer use case there.
Yeah, stablecoin assets has been because they can understand that okay, this is like a crypto version of the dollar, and for them it makes more sense. So what they'll do is they'll store their purchasing power there, and then as their currency inflates, they actually end up gaining more in money because their currency is inflating, it's depreciating faster than the U.S. dollar against the U.S. dollar, right? But the U.S. dollar is also inflating. That's the thing that they don't understand. It's actually Bitcoin is the best asset to hold,
Yes,
But
yeah.
I
wonder if there'll be an
like a
evolution.
paradigm shift.
Yeah, and like they'll kind of recognize like, oh yeah, it's not inflating at 10%, but it's still inflating at like 2% or well a little more now. And it's because that's kind of my own thing. Is like, look, I have of course my savings account where I've got enough money to live off of if something were to happen. But after that, like I'm kind of dumping whatever else. Like after retirement investments, it's all in Bitcoin for me now.
Yeah, same, dude. I tell people all the time, like, because my brother was trying to tell me, like, yo, what you do is like you put it in a Roth IRA and then the HBDA and the blah blah blah, and then you can do the non-taxable. And I was like, dude, just buy Bitcoin.
I'll admit,
like,
so I maxed that out. So you can but the thing is, if you just like max out these retirement accounts, and it's a decent bit of money, but I think it's achievable for most people if you're diligent. To max out your Roth IRA contribution, and just like what's left over. And I almost don't even view Bitcoin as like this big investment like I would buying a stock. I literally see it as a savings account, and that's kind of just the way I treat it. And it's like this is something for when I want to buy a house someday.
Yeah, that's Bitcoin in a nutshell. It's saving. So I tell young Africans when I teach them in my academy, I tell them, look. All that you need to do, because you don't need to go over to the U.S. or wherever any longer, because we have remote work and there's so much different ways to make money. But the area where I'm focused on is more high level technical skills. But there's also like short form content editing or e-commerce or content
sales
writing,
even,
etc.
just like
sales.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do now. You can literally just get a skill and then sell it directly to the open marketplace now. So what I'm just breaking down to them is get that high level skill and then work remotely and then save in Bitcoin. Like that's what you should be doing. So that's what I'm doing.
And don't expect you're going to get rich, right? It's not like you're going to 100x. And look, maybe you might. I don't know. But that's not the expectation you go into it with. It's like I'm just saving in an asset and it's going to still be there. Like that's the big thing for me. It's not like I think that it's going to go crazy. And look, it might go down by half. It might go down by more, but it's always going to be worth something. And I always know that it's still a hard value. And so I'm really curious to see, because people are shifting into these stablecoin assets because of that same problem. It's only like a natural jump. It's like, oh, shoot. Yeah, the U.S. is like, it's still the same problem with inflation. And I sort of think it's still when you have that longer term vision. Because look, if you got to pay rent next month, you got to pay rent. You can't be just dumping into Bitcoin. But
It's true. That's why you need that high level skill, because then even if you're getting paid, let's say 20, 30, 40% less than you would be getting paid in the global north, that's still a great, dude, here, $500 a month is like, dude, you're doing it big here, on like $500 a month,
awesome.
So you can get a nice like 1-bedroom apartment and then still have money for food and still be able to save like $50 to $100 at the end of the month, when you're done with that.
That's great.
So yeah, which is amazing, it's not like that everywhere, by the way. The city centers is actually pretty expensive. Like you're gonna need about like a good like $2,000-ish to like per month, but when you start going a little bit towards the outskirts and etc., where I'm at is a little bit more in the outskirts, but I'm going a little bit further out. I like more like around nature and like no noise pollution, and so for
I'm
me that's
similar
where
there.
I plan to
Stay out of the big cities.
Yeah.
That's why I'm still in Wisconsin. I don't ever want to end up in a New York or LA. Like I want to get to like a slightly bigger area than I am now, but like going big metro area, there's almost like a sweet spot of like you still get all the amenities, but you can actually buy a house, and you can actually like you're 10
Yeah.
minutes away from a nice hike.
Yes, dude. And that's what I like. I don't like the concrete jungle. My parents live in New York, bro, and I just don't understand why people live in New York, man. Like I tell them all the
I
time,
don't
like,
get
yeah, because they have like six apartment. They have a whole apartment building, and that they run, and I'm just like, dude, just sell the whole thing off, take the profit, and then just like move to like Africa is so much, dude. Here, you have massage person on demand. I have a driver on demand. I have anything I need is on demand here. Like the doctor will even come to my house, you know.
That's awesome.
But that's also probably due to connections that I have and everything too. But it's just the convenience of you just get way more money, way more for your money that you spend. You know, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
just prefer it a lot more. But like I said, to each their own. Everybody is like, some people are going to Bali. Some people like staying where they're at. Some people like, South America. Man, some people like,
And like you don't even
Canada
have to
or the
go
U.S.
international, right? Like even if you're not ready to make that jump, because I personally like it's a lot for me. I'm pretty patriotic. I very much will love the U.S. and I'd never move anywhere else. But you don't have to live in the big cities. Like there are some excellent, and I don't even want to call them rural communities, just smaller cities. And I'm hoping that more people will realize that the quality, like you don't have to live in a shoebox in a Denver or, not even like LA, New York, but like even Houston or Austin, like go out a little bit. Like, yeah, you're not going to be able to get, food at 2 a.m. You're not necessarily going to be able to go clubbing, but like, how often do you even do that? You're going to have a much better
Yeah,
quality of life. And then I think that would encourage people, like we were talking about, to raise families more and find more value in that. Like, that's what I really want to look forward to. Like, yeah, maybe I'll
same.
never have gotten to like go out clubbing at 2 a.m. in my hometown, but by 30, I'll actually be able to like have a few kids and a house that I can call my own, and that's really, I think, much more fulfilling. And I actually think young people are realizing that more. I feel like millennials was kind of almost the lost generation, and I actually am seeing, at least in Gen Z in the United States, that they are starting to kind of like recognize, like, hey, maybe this whole moving to the big city for this fast life isn't actually what drives happiness. Maybe there's other ways.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's good that realization is coming to fruition. It's I tend to not like anything that the boomers did at all. Like, there's not a single thing where I can point to where I was like, okay, fiat crap. Most
Yeah.
of the banking institutions crap. Universities don't teach you nothing. Like, it's just like I'm like, what? But yeah, that's just, I don't want to attack the boomers. Any boomers watching that, I apologize. I respect you guys, maybe,
Oh, I'll take
but
it. Yeah, no. You can put that in my vault. I'm not a huge fan of the boomers. Not a huge fan of everything they've done. I'll go toe to toe with any boomer. Tell me what your generation has done. Not a fan.
booyah.
I mean, I like my grandparents, but I'm not gonna pretend like their generation did good for the world.
No, dude, it's crazy. When you start, really investigating history and just. But yeah, I'm hopeful. Like I said, because of for me, Web3 really gave me hope, bro. Before
Yeah.
Web3, I it's not that I didn't know what I want to do. I was always doing stuff, but Web3 really gave me purpose. Like it gave me like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, this is all I want to do. All I want to do is build products that people need, sell them to the open market, and then once they deliver on the promises, then I build another product, or I help other people build products, or I invest in products. This is all I want to do. This is all I want to do. So I'm really happy and thankful for this technology, because it helped expand my mind and helped me solve that missing piece of Africa even, because it made me question what is money. And then I realized that the money was used as a weapon, in a vehicle after colonialism. And I just went down this huge rabbit hole and then figured out so much stuff, and I was just like, damn, this is crazy. And it just helped me, because I was just trying to figure out how to attack this market, and Bitcoin really, really helped me, man. So whoever Satoshi Nakamoto is, man, I thank him, and it also helps unite a lot of people from different walks of life too, as well. So this is the best industry, I think, in the world, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. I refuse to be anywhere else.
Yeah, man. Web3 has flipped the script on like power and control. It's people taking back power from institutions, and no one can control it. It's a blessing to be able to work in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think we'll close it off there, man. Don't want to get too deep.
It's a good starting point, man.
Yeah.
Web3 taking back control from the people.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. And just want to say thank you so much for hopping on, man, taking time out of your day. And dude, it's always nice talking to you. Every time, it's always good vibes, good energy. And I'm looking forward to maybe bringing you back on, seeing some more developments on
sure.
Tunnel.io, because it's a super interesting product, I think. And where can people find you and Tunnel.io? Obviously, it's Tunnel.io.
Yeah, I probably. I mean, Twitter is a good place to find me. You can just search my name, or at Kuphdev, KUPHDEV, on X. So I'm also on LinkedIn a lot. So I probably make like more good content there. I feel like I still struggle a little bit with the how to figure out how to connect with an audience on X. But LinkedIn has always been a little bit easier because you get that little bit longer form. So just post my thoughts, and especially about Tunnel and stuff. And definitely if anyone is looking to do any influencer marketing, especially in the Web3 space, Tunnel would love to help you out. We actually just last month, we closed our first month over 10K in total deal volume. So still early times, but that felt like a really good milestone. And we're actually going to be kicking off a raise in January. So that's really exciting for us. And then post raise, open this thing up and really let it fly.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Bro, thank you so much, man. We got to do this again another time, man.
For sure.
Time.
We'll stay in touch. This has been a really great time. First podcast that I've ever done. So great experience.
Oh, wow. Hopefully not the last.
No, not at all, dude. Not even with you. So I'm hoping this is a good experience, good launching pad. And so look forward to talking to you again someday and some other opportunities too. So if anyone else is out there, hit me up. I'll do your show.
Awesome. This concludes then this episode of the Mooncast, man. Peace. Take care, bro.
Peace out, man.
Have a good one.